everyone's go-to source for all NFL news.
Adam Schefter teased some big breaking news. Adam, you've told us about it. What do we got?
Adam's on the phone.
Yeah, we have some more.
Adam, you got more news? What do you got?
They're going with another move.
And he was the man who knows all, Adam Schefter.
And we're going to get right to some breaking news here that just came down. This tweet from Adam Schefter.
It's ESPN NFL insider Adam Schefter.
The Bears look dead. The Vikings look dead. And so the division comes down to Detroit and Green Bay.
Adam Schefter on Jen, Gabe, and Chewy is presented by Orthopedic Associates of Wisconsin. There is a difference. Also sponsored by Island Resort and Casino.
I want to know when this guy sleeps, man, because the first thing I woke up to this morning was a notification from the ESPN app that Adam Schefter was reporting that the Raiders had cleaned house and they fired their head coach and general manager, and that happened 1 a.m. Eastern, midnight Central time. Adam, did you get any sleep last night around the trade deadline and then with the firing that happened out in Las Vegas?
Well, I will tell you that basically last night I fell asleep about 11:30, maybe about 11. I woke up about an hour later at about midnight, East Coast time, and I had 3 different text messages that the Raiders had fired Josh McDaniels, and one of them said that they were going to hire Antonio. Now, on the phone trying to get somebody that would verify. A lot of people not picking up their phones at 1 in the morning to verify news that really they didn't want to have out at that moment. And finally got somebody on the phone at the time, that right around the time the team was releasing it, and also was able to confirm that they were hiring Antonio Pierce, who I wonder, Chewy, you ever played against him?
The former linebacker from the Giants?
Correct.
Yeah, sure. I know Antonio played against him, yeah.
Yeah, he's a great guy. I worked with him at ESPN.
Yeah.
And who knew that ESPN would become like this minor league breeding ground of interim head coaches across the NFL, producing Jeff Saturday and Antonio Pierce, but that's a story for another day. So I was able to confirm that Antonio Pierce was taking over as the interim. Kelly, who was the assistant GM out in Vegas, was taking over the judge. That went on till about 1, and then working, literally slept an hour, roughly. Get an hour's sleep last night. Gabe and Chewy, that was good.
What was Mark Davis trying to recreate the Colts moving from Baltimore to Indy in the middle of the night? What the hell's he doing?
You know what? I think in the end, honestly, he just felt like he had and seen enough, and I think that he felt like he owed it to some of his players to make this move, in light of the fact that they were as disappointing this year as they were. And just think about this, okay? In January 2022, Mark Davis gave Josh McDaniels a 6-year, fully guaranteed contract. And 20 months into that contract, before the end of his second year, Mark Davis fired him. So Mark Davis owes him essentially 4.5 years of salary. Think about that a second.
In your experience then, Adam,
that's tens of millions of dollars.
Yeah.
Tens of millions of dollars.
How do they pay that out? I can't imagine it's one lump sum on your way out the door. Do they pay it annually? How did that happen? Because it's clearly not the first time a coach has been fired with years left on his contract.
Yeah, you know what? I would say that I've never been a part of anything like that to know how it works. I'm going to guess that they just pay him out. They continue to pay him on however they do it, a weekly, bi-weekly, monthly basis until the end of the contract. That's I'm sure how it works, although I've never asked a coach who had 4.5 years remaining on a contract worth as much as he does how it works. But I'll tell you what, I'm going to ask some questions, and I'll report back to you on it next week.
All right, awesome. I cannot wait.
Adam, did he have to pay Gruden too?
Yes.
And he had to pay.
Well, hold on. That one's a little bit mysterious, right?
Yeah.
John Gruden was terminated with cause for the emails, but there was going to be some legal action involved, and I don't know whether they sat down and and there was great affection between those two men. Whether Mark just paid him a lump sum or they agreed to, like, let's just say you owed him, I'm making this up, $10 million. Like, did they say, hey, did Mark say, I'm just going to give you $5 million if you're okay with that, or no, it's like I want the 10 because this is unjustifiable. I'm going to sue you. I don't know I don't know what they did with that, but let's put it this way: there was a lot of money, $100 million involved in the John Gruden deal. What he actually collected, I don't know. But there was a lot of money there, and there was a lot of money here on Josh McDaniels, not to mention the salary of the general manager, Dave Ziegler, and all the assistant coaches. By the way, there are a number of former Patriot players who were brought to Las Vegas as well, who they're around, they're playing for the team, they're helping the team. But are you telling me that once this team hires a new head coach or a new GM, that they're committed to Jimmy Garoppolo beyond this year? Like, what commitment do they have to Jimmy Garoppolo and others?
Shifting gears, as the Green Bay Packers did make a move, Adam, yesterday at the trade deadline, as Rasul Douglas going to the Buffalo Bills with a fifth-round pick in exchange for a third-round pick. What were your thoughts when you saw that trade of what the direction of the Green Bay Packers is for 2023?
I was surprised. I didn't understand it, to be perfectly frank. You're taking a starting cornerback and you're trading him for essentially 2 rounds in the draft. Like, it was that important to move on from a guy who makes plays, who starts a cornerback, to take a 5th-round pick and turn it into it. Now, again, I want to hear more about it because yesterday there were 8 trades that were finalized. There was a coach who was fired. We got Halloween going on and, trying to get my daughter trick-or-treat. So there was a lot of things, and I probably didn't get all the answers in addition to, some of the bigger moves made in March. But you tell me the thinking there from your perspective, because I was surprised that you would trade a starting cornerback for essentially 2 rounds in a draft.
I immediately thought white flag. I thought this team's given up. We're going to stockpile picks.
That's what it felt like to me, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what it felt like.
Because, Adam, he has been one of their most consistent defenders, and you could say just based on this year, he's played better than Jair. He's made more plays. So I don't understand it. I don't know the direction this team is going in, and I don't know how the veteran players are going to react to this, because I've been on teams like this where, guys tank. 2 to 4 week injuries now turn into 5-6 weeks, and this is what happens exactly with a team that gives up.
And as you know, Chewy, right? Instead of 12 guys being in the training room, now it's 18 guys in the training room.
Sure.
There's more guys in the training room. The stints there last longer than they did before. You're right. The injuries are extended. The return to play isn't as quick as it was at the start of the year. Like, yeah, there's a difference that goes on with a lot of these things.
Did you happen to hear any other Packers names that were floated out there that maybe trades didn't happen, that the Packers were trying to be active, a little more active at the trade deadline?
No, I did not. Certain teams, it seems like, they're always just ultra aggressive, right? Like the Eagles, the Niners, maybe the Seahawks. I don't always view Green Bay in that category because they're very comfortable and content and confident in what they do with the draft and picking their own players and growing them, and they've done a really strong job with that. By and large over the years. And I just don't look at them as a team that usually is one of these wheeling and dealing type teams that looks to address needs every single year. Again, the one move they made yesterday, I was a little surprised by, frankly. Wanted to hear more, but they're just not one of those ultra aggressive teams that seems to be involved in every deal.
Adam, who do you think the best GMs are in the league? Give me your top 3. Because I love John Lynch. I don't know how he does it, but he's constantly doing things. And you brought up earlier in the year the whole Trey Lance debacle and what they gave up for him. And this is debilitating to an organization. And he pulls himself out of it. And yesterday he makes a great move to go get Chase Young.
Yeah, well, I think, to me, John does a great job. I mean, he's a great guy. I think I look at it, and there are, look, you look at the teams across let's give flowers and plaudits to Brett Veach just for drafting Patrick Mahomes. If he never makes another good move, that's enough for me to qualify as a great GM.
Mm-hmm.
Howie Roseman in Philadelphia is ultra aggressive. I mean, the guy never stops. He obsesses about trades, and another guy that's in on everyone. I think Baltimore has done a really good job of that with Eric DaCosta over time. Chris Greer's gone out and traded for Tyreek Hill. Will McClay in Dallas. I know Jerry's the GM, but he's done a nice job with the talent and personnel there as well. I'm an Andrew Berry fan. The Cleveland GM, think he's very, very smart, very impressive in the way John Schneider in Seattle. Long history of drafting great players, right? I'm just riffing off the top of my head. There are more. We go through this. Mickey Loomis has done the job forever and done a, really nice job in New Orleans. So, there's a lot of great GMs in this.
How does the complicated nature of how the Packers are constructed? I'm not even talking about the GM not hiring the coach. I'm more talking about not having an owner. And the CEO, president of the organization, has a deadline of when he has to retire. Mark Murphy has to retire in July of 2025 because they have an age limitation on that role, so somebody else will take over. That kind of seems like it complicates things in terms of the Packers in making some of these decisions. If they wanted to be aggressive the way that the Raiders were just aggressive in letting go of their GM and head coach and kind of hitting that reboot, but this guy's only got 2 years left. In your mind, does that kind of complicate what the next 2 years of the Green Bay Packers looks like?
Oh, maybe a little bit. To me, they've always run kind of independent there, right? The front office does its thing, and the coaching staff does its thing, and it feels like it's church and state. And it does feel, to me, my perception from afar is that they do feel like a little bit separate. Whereas it does feel like there's, in some places, a bit more connectivity in some of those decisions, right? Like in San Francisco, you brought up. I think Kyle Shanahan is a driving force, in many of the decisions with John. And I think in Green Bay sometimes, Goody probably does what he wants to do, or Mark Murphy's going to do what he wants to do, and Matt's job is to coach the team. That's his job. And I don't know that the jobs, from my perception and my opinion, mix as much as some other places, but what they've done has worked awfully well for them over time. So who am I to argue?
Adam, I don't know when you're going to have time, but I hope you have time to take a nap today, buddy. Just catch some extra Z's.
It's funny you say that. I'm actually on the way. I committed to this event today in New York City to raise awareness for type 1 diabetes testing. My wife is type 1. And I committed to this event months ago, and I committed to this event on purpose because it was the day after the trade deadline. It's November. I'm like, well, we're going to have a nice quiet day on Wednesday. I'll work Tuesday all day. We'll do the trades. And then Wednesday, we'll raise awareness for type 1 testing. People should be going out and getting tested, screened for that, right? And so literally left my house about 6:45 this morning. Been in traffic here for 2 hours going into New York City. Going to do this event here all day where we try to raise awareness to get people tested. I'm doing it with Robin Arzone, the Peloton instructor, and Usher, who guy you may have heard of. He's performing at halftime of the Super Bowl. So I'm going to do that. But I will say this, that if I had known that I was not going to sleep the night before, there was going to be the trade deadline and the first head coach GM combination fire of the year, I don't know that I would have been as enthused about doing this event all day in New York City. But here we are on the way in, and that's what we're going to do today. And while I'm at it, I hope everybody does go out and get screened for type 1 diabetes. As somebody who's married to a type 1 diabetic, I think it's very important that people test and screen for that so that they make their lives a little bit simpler and easier.
Adam, Green Bay needs more guys like you. You don't have time for the training room, which I love.
Well, Chewy, I appreciate you guys. Thanks for making time for me this morning. And you know what? Rather than taking, 15, 20-minute nap, I'm happy to come on with Gabe and Chewy.
Thanks, buddy.
Thanks, Shefty. We appreciate it, bud.
Thanks, guys. Have a great day. We'll talk next Wednesday.